I'm literally the only person that does what I do. Like literally, like I'm literally the only person that does what I do within the capacity of, working as just a separate entity. All of these things are so different. And I do feel like I'm the only person that could navigate that the way I do. And I take great pride in that. And I am so humbled by that.
Welcome to Femme Forte, a podcast where we celebrate women in music and performing arts. I'm your host, Amanda DeFries. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode. A few housekeeping things. One of the easiest things you can do to support the show is by sharing and subscribing. And if you're listening to this on Spotify, you can go ahead and drop some comments and questions in the interactive feature at the bottom of the episode. You can leave us voicemails either with your thoughts on the show or some questions you'd like us to answer on an upcoming episode. Go to femfortepodcast.com and click the mic button in the corner. On this episode, I am joined by Courtney Allyson Mills. Courtney Allyson Mills has over 25 years of dance education, freelance choreography, and consulting experience within several facets of the performing arts. She has worked with many notable drum corps, marching bands, and winter guard, percussions, and winds programs. Her focus is always creating a safe space for students to understand choreography, movement, and performance. She continues to work with marching bands, color guards, drill teams, and dance programs as a choreographer, clinician, performance consultant, production specialist, and instructional coach. We talk about her passion for dance, choreography, and her journey into creating non-traditional pathways for the arts, as well as the power of neurodiversity. Thank you so much for listening, and I hope you enjoy this episode. Welcome back to Femme Forte. Today I have a very exciting guest with me. Today we have Courtney Allyson Mills. Thank you so much for being on the show.
Amanda, thank you so much for having me. And I know that we've been trying to get this together and we're both really busy and we travel, and I'm so glad that we could finally do this.
Yes, I'm so excited to get into everything because I have just so many questions for you. But before we get started, I know who you are. Can you tell our listeners and our viewers a little bit about who you are, your background, and where you're from?
That could take all day. Okay, so I'm originally from Florida, and I did marching band there. I actually did the color guard at Seminole, but before that I was a clarinet player. But I played clarinet. I fell in love with color guard because I really wanted to perform, and so that just kind of took me into the marching arts. I marched Carolina Crown in the 90s. And I marched a winter guard called the Company. And from there, I started teaching drum corps and kind of fell in love with movement. I feel like when we go into, later stages of life and we're just out of high school, we're pushed to know what we want to do and go to college for that thing. And I had no idea what that was. So I just spent my 20s traveling and figuring out what I liked. And it came down to I love dance. And so I ended up going back at 30 and getting my bachelor's degree in dance. And then I taught in the public school sector for quite a bit in Texas. And then I moved to Colorado and decided I wanted a master's. And so I ended up with a master's in performance psychology, which has been obviously so helpful because especially in this new day and age of that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. I have a lot of really random jobs, which I love. I broadcast for Box 5, all the Bands of America things.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've been so excited to dive in with you is just you are the wearer of so many hats. And so yes. I want to knock them all down, but I want to start off with dance. Like you said, going back to school and pursuing dance, what made you so passionate about dance to begin with?
I can remember a moment in 1992 on the field at Grand Nationals. My band had gone up there as a freshman, and this is when I was playing clarinet. And it was during the ballad, and I remember being in my stuffy marching band uniform with my shako and my cummerbund, and I essentially was watching the girl in front of me on her swing flag, and it was so beautiful, and she was in it and she was performing, and I was like, oh my God, that's what I want to do. And so kind of as my life progressed, it became less about the action of dance and more about connecting the emotional quality that you feel when you're moving that I was drawn to. So I had that emotion understanding, but maybe I didn't have the physical presence to really truly understand what that was. And so that's kind of the trajectory just went from, okay, what do I do next, to, oh my gosh, I need to take dance classes at 30 next to 18-year-olds who were just ridiculous dancers. It was very humbling and it was amazing.
And so what got you passionate from, obviously you're really passionate about the performance aspect and expression of movement through dance, but have been a previous dance director. What got you really into wanting to teach others?
I think that just kind of came innately. I've always felt such a connection to the mind, body, the somatic experience. And I felt like that was my way to help other teenagers through the worst part of their life. Because honestly, high school is the absolute worst, right? We're all awkward. We're trying to figure it out, and we're not supposed to have big emotions, right? We have to keep those in check. And for me, I found dance as an outlet when I was there, when I was in color guard and moving. It gave me an outlet to be somebody else. And I needed that in that space. And so being able to give that to students, I don't ever feel like I'm teaching just dance. I really do feel like I'm teaching them how to be themselves and to be okay with expressing and to really feel as if they're in complete control of their emotion through their body. So yeah, that was like the whole thing it was almost like a life lesson for me to like, I go and I teach these steps and these movements, but I always connect it back to where is that with you? How do you feel about that?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's a perfect segue kind of into how you got your master's into, yes, you can teach dance, but the whole connection of the mind and body and how that affects you into your expression of your art, I think is really interesting.
It is. And I'll be honest, this is a really, really weird, the reason I got my performance, like I went into performance psychology is because I wanted to work with golfers.
Okay.
Because when I say performance psychology, all of us think performance, right? But performance psychology is literally the act of performing anything. And so golf is such a game that's psychological and it's very physical and you have to connect those two. But I'm fascinated by, people that have a bad day on the course. How can I be in there? How could I help them? Like kind of find that like groundedness and then continue forward. Like that was literally what I got into it for. And then I found out that the U.S. Army is the highest employer of performance psychologists.
Oh, wow.
And that's because they have to train people psychologically from the minute they put a gun in their hands before and after the trigger pulls. That's a performance, right? Mm-hmm. That's like their job. And your mental state within that is absolutely like crucial to the mission. And so when I found that out, I'm like, oh my God, this is so much bigger than what I thought it was. Because I did go into it thinking that it was either athletic or fine arts based.
Yeah.
So finding out all these other things, I was like, oh my God, this is so useful for so many things. So yeah, it just kind of turned into this whole and then I don't know, there's something about being an older lifelong learner that is like, because I decided not to go to school, I decided not to finish college in my 20s. Mm-hmm. There's something about choosing your path later when you have a better understanding of who you are rather than going to college for this thing and then 10 years later being like, I never loved that. And I'm the person that I have to love what I do. Yeah. I have to. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's so cool in the many facets that you do of how you've been able to, it started with dance, it started with your, drum corps and color guard, and how it's flourished into all these different avenues.
Yeah, it's literally, it's so wild to think about. I had this thought the other day. I'm literally the only person that does what I do. I'm literally the only person that does what I do within the capacity of working as just a separate entity for USA Gymnastics, for the Breakdown, for the Aldine ISD, where I'm an instructional coach for dance teachers. Mm-hmm. All of these things are so different. And I do feel like I'm the only person that could navigate that the way I do. And I take great pride in that. And I am so humbled by that. And it really does make me feel like I have to show up every day. And I do. Every day, just 100%. Yeah. And that's the thing that gets me out of bed is knowing that, I honestly don't know what I'm going to be choreographing tomorrow in Mississippi. Mm-hmm. So TMEA, Mississippi, right? And then next week I go to Houston and do instructional coaching. So it's all over the place, but I think it works so well with the neurodivergent part of me and not having to be in this one space every single day. So I loved teaching. I loved teaching high school. High school's fascinating and those kids are wild. And I loved it. But I find so much more of myself, and I've found so much more of myself since I've left teaching and being able to give to others.
Absolutely. And I have so many questions about that. The first being with how do you manage your time doing all these amazing things?
Honestly, somebody asked me that recently on Facebook. Actually, I think Michael Rosales posted something about it. And I live and die by my Google Calendar. Like literally, like everything's color coded. And the minute I even have maybe like something that's like, this could be a possibility for a weekend, I mark it off in a different color. So I know that if something else comes up or if I need to reach out, but I literally live and die by my Google Calendar.
Yeah, I've learned in my Google Calendar as well. That's where I schedule even like personal time or time with friends. And I actually saw this video on Instagram the other day where it's like, yeah, you realize as an adult, you have to treat yourself like reservations for a restaurant.
Yes.
Where you're literally like, 100%. Oh, if that reservation is taken, sorry, you don't have my time.
Yes, absolutely. Party for 6, you are not allowed.
Yeah.
But like absolutely. So that Google Calendar, that understanding of what each of those color coded things mean is like, honestly, like flights. Did I book the car parking? Did I, do I have a place to stay? Like all of that is in there. So it's definitely a shift from the show up to work every morning and then leave at, 3:00. Yeah. So now I'm like, okay, where am I going today?
Yeah. And so in all the different like freelance and unique opportunities that you have, how were you able to get your foot in the door to even start this very unique position, like you said?
I've thought about that for a really long time. Like, how did I get this? I just feel like when it all started, my parents were from Seminole, Florida, and I just feel like it was coincidence and happenstance that I was brought up there. And my color guard instructors, Adam Sage, Michael Shapiro, and Michael James, all three of those are just such big influences in modern day pageantry. And I honestly feel like I was just saying right place, right time. And from there, I've been able to have opportunities through them. They were the ones that really pushed. Michael James is my mentor, my dance mentor. And all through high school, he's the person that I emulate. He's the person that I learned literally everything I know until I went to college in my 30s. And so I felt like just having his mentorship all through my 20s, that was great. But it's all about connections, and it's all about who you know, and it's all about relationship building. That's been huge. And these events, these TMEA events, DCI, BOA, all of those things, those are relationship building things where, I'll be honest, I am the last, I hate self-promoting. I hate it, right? Like we're all like, okay, here we go. But at the same time, I know that that's part of the game now. Like I have to say, okay, I have this set of skills, and it's very different than a lot of people in this activity because it's not necessarily just movement based. It's a psychology based, it's emotionally based, it's performance based. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And going back to that, that is something that I very much preach all the time is networking, like especially for this podcast, is being able to have connections. And I am someone who really just applies that to my life and anywhere I am, whether it's professional or personal.
Absolutely.
It's been really cool to like meet someone in the streets of Austin or even in the streets of, where we are in San Antonio and just tell them about what I do. And chances are they might have a really cool, unique opportunity or can connect me with someone who they think is great for X, Y, and Z.
Right. And I also think too, there's space for us as educators to make sure we connect with our students, because at some point those students may be in those ranks that are hiring people like me, right? Mm-hmm. So making sure that, you're building those relationships with the people you teach, because that's the next generation of, the band directors, that's the next generation of educators, and making sure that they have a foundation of exactly what it is that I do and how they feel when we're working together. That to me is the most important thing. So that respect is not just for the adults, it's for the students, because they're the ones that we're here for. Yeah. They're the ones that I do this for.
Absolutely. I mean, it definitely took me like until kind of towards the end of my senior year to realize how much that is so important. And every day when I think about doing this podcast, like a large majority of my love for music and the arts, yes, came from mostly my dad, but it really came from my band director, who unfortunately is no longer with us anymore. But like, he made such an impact on my life, and if he was still here to this day, like I would want to just chat with him and, interview him and stuff like that. So
absolutely. Yeah. And I have that, it's really funny. So I have that connection too with my band director, Mike Robinson, and he's at University of Georgia. And it's so funny how he'll see a picture of me with somebody and he's like, oh my God, how do you know them? And I'm like, oh, that's just such a small world. Yeah. It's so freaking cool. Like, it's so cool that this world is so small, and we can always find somebody that we have in common.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And so I want to ask you a little bit about the USA Gymnastics stuff that you do. I just find it wildly fascinating. And like you said, no one else on that team does what you do. And it's such a very niche and unique opportunity. So for people who want or have unique and niche skills that want to be able to create a career out of it, how does one even start to go about that?
Man, again, I just fell into this. So my contact, so I've never done gymnastics. I am 100%. I can do a cartwheel and I can do a handstand, and that's it. But the person that actually brought me in, her name is Shelba Waldron, and she was a color guard instructor when I was like in the Seminole area when I was growing up. And she taught this group called Shock Tie, and then she marched Star of Indiana. Well, she started getting into policy. She started getting into like, when all the Larry Nassar stuff went down with the abuse and all of that grossness, USA Gymnastics took a huge hit. And I do find parallels within USA Gymnastics and the marching arts when it comes to those unfortunate things. But what it comes down to is there has to be policy in place that protects our students. But there can't be policy in place until we educate. We educate like our people. Yeah. Like, we have to educate the band community, the color guard community, the drumline community. We have to educate them on what does a healthy relationship with your student look like? What does a healthy program look like? And how do you teach fear within physicality? Because that's what we do. As color guard instructors, we teach these kids that are 14 and 15 years old how to overcome their fear of being hit by this rotating rifle in the air, right? And that's really difficult to not get frustrated.
Yeah.
Same thing with gymnastics. There's a fear in the physicality that they're teaching, because these 6 and 7 year olds are like, okay, you're going to try a front handspring. Well, that kid's going to be like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. Well, there are steps you take before that, but at the same time, that's scary. And so a lot of the abuse that happens is because these teachers, old school, right? Like, we know that some of the practices that happened long before we were in the activity, and even when we were in the activity, were not healthy and were abusive. And I recognize that. I recognize some of the people I taught with. I recognize it, even in myself. I see some of the practice that I did when I was younger because I didn't know.
Yeah.
And what it comes down to is you don't know what you don't know. So my thing with USA Gymnastics, Shelba called me and was like, hey, we're starting this initiative called Professionalism for Novice Coaches. And we want to write like curriculum. And so we literally wrote curriculum for an entire course that we're right now attempting to get. And we go and lecture during the summer about this course. And we talk to younger gym owners or coaches. And it's really, really cool to be in a completely different industry and have the same information be very similar. The only thing, it's because I do lectures there and I do presentations, but I also do lectures, presentations for band and color guard and stuff like that. A lot of the times I just go in and change the slide from performer to athlete because they don't consider their athletes performers. Oh, isn't that weird? Yeah. I know, because I say performer and Shelba's like, no, they're athletes. I'm like, okay, the athletes. Yeah. But there's a performance quality in that. And even if it's not an expressive performance quality, there's that mind-body connection that's coming right back to us. And how do you teach that?
Yeah.
How do you teach somebody to get over that? Because it's not just telling them to.
Yeah.
You have to find a way to get them to come to that conclusion.
Yeah. And I find it so interesting and honestly awesome that in general, mental health and how it applies to more than, just your personal life, obviously in these different performance, athletic, et cetera, aspects is becoming, awareness is being spread and it's becoming more to the forefront of these kinds of conversations. And I think that's really important. I mean, I see it all the time, even in having conversations with my family who are from a different generation and how they're starting to understand of how mental health is and like what research and now that awareness is being spread, how more new healthy ways and things are coming to fruition of how to teach, but also process things in a healthy way.
And to take care of yourself in the meantime, right? So it's taking care, it's just like everyone always talks about, like, you're the flight attendant. You have to put your mask on before you help others, right? It's one of my favorite things is you can't pour from an empty cup. I can't be creative. I can't do any of these things. I can't be 100% if I don't take care of myself because I am the vessel that's able to give them what they need. And if I'm not full, I can't give them what they need. I can give them like a little bit, but I am that person that I have to be 100% or I can't be anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Was there something specifically within your life? I mean, obviously, like I said before, mental health is really important.
Yes.
But is there any specific drive or fulfillment that you get that has made you so passionate about pursuing this certain avenue?
I think that in my marching years, I feel like there were things that could have been done differently. And I took all of those things, and I do feel like I wish that everybody would take like all of their teachers' information because we've all had so many, or the people we've taught with. And that's what I've done is I've just taken these things that I really like that I thought were helpful. And I've seen the things that I didn't, that I was like, maybe that's not a good idea. Or even things that I had done that was like, dude, you cannot do that. Right. But I think for me, it's taking from everybody and creating my own pedagogy in how I approach. And honestly, it's teaching dance is majority teenage girls, So for me, for a long time, that you see the forefront of that mental health because our teenage girls are just the most awful people on the planet. They really are. They're so mean and they're so just like, and it's hard to watch. And so when you can create a space for them to be kids, all of a sudden, all of that disappears. And it takes a minute to like get them out of that, I have to be whatever, into the space of, oh yeah, I'm 16 years old. I really like, a lot of the time I'll teach class and I'll be like, you are not grown. Stop thinking that you're grown with your nails and your whatever, like you're a kid. And when I start to break that down and they start to become that kid again is when I can work the best. So for me, when I teach dance, it's less about technique. I sneak that in another way. Yeah. But it's more about the process of getting them to fall back in love with the child that they were. Yeah. And become that. And that's when they start moving in a more free and like, when we're kids, we're on the playground and we're just like super goofy. When you start to see them come back to that, the energy in the room shifts and they all of a sudden like, it's so cool to see them revert back to that 5-year-old goofy self of theirs. Yeah. So yeah. I think that's really important. And I think also, I hate to bring this up, but for instance, we see that now with like some of the girls who are on like Dance Moms. Oh my God. And that was a huge show like growing up that I watched with my parents all the time. And now they're on different podcasts talking about their life and how that became essentially their identity. And some of them have now either, have implemented dance a little bit in their life or no longer do it anymore. Right. And so, I think that really kind of helps start that conversation in that front. And now it's become this thing where more and more people are stepping up and talking about it. Yeah, I think too, it's really funny. And being a dance director in Texas specifically, I've worked with some of the most amazing dancers, high school age dancers, that it's literally literally the most brilliant dancers I've worked with, but they don't do it after high school. It becomes completely obsolete.
Yeah.
And that's the part that makes me sad, because it was just this thing. It wasn't like their love. And I feel like that's my love, right? So, I'm not the 5, 6, 7, 8 gal. I'm the, oh my God, how do you feel about that gal? Right.
Yeah.
And so, some students respond to me better. Some students are like, I'm just doing this because I want a letter on my jacket, and I've spent all of this money and all of this time, and my parents have been so supportive of the dance career for me to completely leave it. Yeah. And that to me is like fascinating.
Yeah. And I can even speak from personal experience. I had to take a break from pursuing like performance. So I was a jazz studies major, and I had a really hard time my first year being a music major, not only from the transition of going from only doing it one period to now it consumes your life,
right?
But it became a point where I practiced so much, I lost the fun out of it, because I was putting too much pressure on myself and then comparing myself to others way too much. And so I took a step back. Then I was able to do the media thing, and then obviously found this opportunity to blend the two and two together. And now, as I'm almost 24, which is like 6 years later from
so old,
like 6 years later after taking a break from it, I am now getting back into performing again. I'm now, doing the Austin Symphonic Band. I'm now, looking to play drum set in some cover bands, and like actually remembering the love of performing again, because really I practiced so much that I lost that love.
Right.
And so I think to your point about when people are like, yeah, I'm going to do it till high school and then quit it. Like, I think pressure is a large piece on it, but also just like you said, how we're taught and structured to think about it in a certain way.
Absolutely. And, when we think about teenagers, all teenagers, they've been told what to do, how to do, when to do, why to do from the minute they were born. And so part of my process when I go into work is, instead of telling them what to do, I ask them questions. I allow them to start thinking about their own, like, what do I need? And it really, really is hard for them, because they don't know, because no adult has ever asked them a question.
Yep.
They've only told them what to do. And that to me that is the place where I reside. I live in that space of, I'm just going to ask you questions, and I want you to come forward with that. I want you to start thinking about, what do you feel about that? And it may not be different. It may not be the same as everybody. And that's brilliant. So I do this improv exercise with marching bands. And of course, the minute I say improv, they're all like this. But here's the deal. Nobody teaches anybody how to improvise. They just say improv. So all we do is like, they're like, oh, what do I do? Right?
Yeah.
So you have to be really guided with that. So I do this exercise, and it's really, really funny. You guys can totally steal it. But what I do is I make it silly. So the first thing I do is I split the group in half, and I have one group over here and one group over here. And I go and I whisper to this group, okay, you are going to pretend that you are trying to unwire a bomb, and it doesn't work, and you have to get away really quick because it's going to blow up, but everything's in slow motion. And so they're like, okay. I was like, you can't plan anything, just, So then I go to the other side of the room, and I go, okay, you guys are in a movie theater, and you are watching this action movie, and they're really going to try to get this bomb, and it's not going to work. And I want you to react to what they're doing as if you're watching the movie. And so they're just like, okay, let's do this. And so it's really funny, because then you see this slow motion effort, and they see their friends being silly. I put on like action music, like, and they're just like, but it's so cool to see them, because they all want to be movie stars. Mm-hmm. They're all starring in their own movie anyway. So all of a sudden, this gives them the outlet to be as silly and as over the top as they want to be, without having like a direction or a score, or like, I want you to do this across the floor, right?
Yeah.
I'm giving them, like, literally, I want you to pretend you're in a movie. And they know what that is, but it's improvisation.
Yeah.
Right? So seeing the faces of the kids that are pretending to eat popcorn while in slow motion and pointing at their friends, and then the kids running away from the bomb, and then I say, boom, and then they all have to like fall to the ground, whatever, in slow motion. My favorite this was my favorite moment of this, and it's the only time it's happened. And I've done this exercise a while. I was at Clements High School in Sugar Land, and we did this exercise. And when I said boom, everybody fell except for this one kid. And he just started walking forward slow motion, and he put his glasses down as if the bomb just exploded behind him. And I was like, oh my God, like nobody's ever done that. And I flipped out. I was like, that was so awesome. I was like, what grade are you? And he's like, I'm a freshman. And I was like, oh my God, I'm so excited to work with you for the next 4 years, because like that was his thought. Mm-hmm. That was his thought. Like nobody else, he made a choice that nobody else made. And for me to see somebody do that was like, oh my God, I love that choice. Nobody's ever done it. And so being able to tap into their own creativity helps break up that understanding of what it means to be emotional and expressive, especially with, high school band kids that are like, arms, legs, what do you want me to do?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And especially in an element where most of them probably don't have any movement or dance experience.
No.
And so they're going to be uncomfortable anyway. So
right. And that's a lot, honestly, like that's literally the entire reasoning for the breakdown is what we do is create that space for the leaders in the band to come and to be completely and totally like, okay, this is a space, we're creating a safe space for you to start to understand why this is important. And nobody's judging you because we're all on the same page. Yeah. And it's like literally the coolest thing to watch is allowing their guard down to become these performers.
Yeah. Yeah, I can attest to that as have been to a few breakdown camps myself. It's so cool, especially even just from day 1 to day 3, or even within those, first 8 hours that they're there, how they came in super shy and now are, being a rock star.
Yeah, no, and it literally the transformation's so cool. My favorite is watching the faces at the end of the camp of their parents.
Being like, wow, you did that.
Well, they have no idea that their kid is capable of that because nobody's ever asked them or put them in a space where they were able to express that or be as big as they could. Because when they're in front of their peers, their form of communication is through their phones. Like that's how they work. Mm-hmm. And, whatever. But once you put those down and you have to look at somebody in the eye and you have to like have that connection with them, they don't know how to do that. And I don't want to like back in my day the whole time I'm here, but back in my day, I tell them this all the time, like you had to physically go up to somebody and introduce yourself. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times if I go into a new program, I literally the first thing I do is like, all right, I want you to just walk around. First day of school, I want you to shake hands. Teach them how to shake a hand because most of them don't know how. Mm-hmm. Don't have dead fish hand. Like, give me a good grip.
Yeah.
You're going to introduce yourself, and I don't even care if you know this person already. I want you to introduce yourself. I want you to be confident, and then we're going to take 2 minutes. You're going to talk to that person, and then we're going to switch. And so having that human interaction, that human connection, again, creates a confident space and a confident environment rather than the first day of school, all of them coming in and just being like, okay, we're starting.
Yeah.
It creates, my goal in every space I'm in is to create community. That is the goal.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. I mean, that's what this podcast is all about, is creating that safe space and community to be able to share our experiences and our thoughts. And I cannot express that enough, how networking and creating community is so important, especially now more than ever. And I think you mentioned a really good point earlier about creating that path for yourself. And I think, and really, if you want to go big picture here, I mean, all of our society is being told you can only do XYZ occupations, or there's only these jobs available, and you have to work your typical 9-to-5 office job, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we're finding more and more that people are really creating a life that they love, but there's not a lot of resources out there to be able to do that because, as you said, the lack of having the opportunity to ask yourself, what do I want to do? And how can I create this life for myself? And, once given the resources, or at least have a thought, your dream or life goal is actually pretty achievable if you put your head down and really think about it.
Well, from a societal norm, specifically as women, I think that we're brought up in this idea, and that was how I was brought up, is this is your life path. You are going to go to a 4-year school. You're going to meet your husband. You're going to have children. That was the life path. That was the life path of the women before me. That's the life path I was taught. And so when I left high school and none of that made sense to me and it didn't feel good to be in school. And like, I just was like, this isn't me. And it was a struggle with my parents, because that was their expectation, because they didn't know any other way.
Yeah.
And looking at it now, looking back, our parents do the best they can.
Yeah.
Right. But in the same breath, it's like having somebody like actually ask me what I wanted to do or how I felt would have been really helpful. Like would have been super helpful at that point, rather than like feeling so weird because my path was so different than my classmates. I didn't have that desire to be in this like thing, like this societal whatever. And it's scary to step out of that norm and to be like, okay, I am doing this. And I'll be honest, like it wasn't like I was actively thinking about that. I was just didn't feel good, so I didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right. But like now that I look back and I can process it, I'm like, that norm never worked for me. And had somebody told me, you don't have to do this, it would have saved me like years and years and years of therapy and all of the things that helped me become who I am. So a lot of the times when I stand in front of kids, my whole thing is like, you guys don't have to be who your parents want you to be.
Yeah.
And I know that that's hard for a lot of people. That's hard for a lot of families. That's hard for a lot of cultures. But, you know, at the end of the day, you have to follow that thing that makes you happy. Because if you don't, like, what are you doing? Yeah. You get this one shot at this experience of life. And if at the end of the day, and if you want to have a family, that's great. I think there are people that have kids that love it, that I'm just like, this is exactly what you wanted. My best friend, Meg, she grew up in the same house she lives in now. She has a husband and they have a son, and it is her perfect life, and it's everything she's ever wanted. And when I visit her, I've never seen her so herself. On the other hand, I visited friends who have kids, and I'm like, you're not even who I know you to be, and how I know you. And that shift is so interesting, and they're brilliant people, right? But they've kind of succumbed to that societal norm of this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And as women, that's really hard to fight. That's really hard to fight.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I totally wholeheartly agree with you. We could talk
hours.
Literally for hours
Yes.
on that, because I have so many thoughts on that.
Yeah.
But just transitioning a little bit out of all the great things that you do, what's the most fulfilling part that you get out of it? Like, what keeps your passion alive and thriving?
I think the newness of every day, and every person or every program that I interact with has a backstory and a different understanding of what I do. And so having that variety of things, that the variety of people, the variety of relationships, the variety of kids standing in front of you. I worked with Flower Mound this year. I just went in and did creative movement classes with their band. I didn't work on show stuff. I didn't work on technique. I worked on creative movement because Brent Biscup and Jana Harvey really wanted the kids to start to embody and understand emotion without the technical aspect, because they felt it made them better musicians, not just on the field, but off the field. Because when you can embody that feeling of whatever you're playing, it becomes different. It sounds different, right? Your body feels different when you're playing something that's sad, and that comes through, that energy comes through whatever you're playing. And so for me, working with Flower Mound was completely different than working with Hernando, Mississippi, where I'm going tomorrow. That group has a completely different vibe, but those kids have so much in common because they're just that age where I can get in and be like, all right, we're going to be super weird. I'm the super weird lady that comes in, and they're just like, yeah. At first they're like, what is this lady doing? But by the end of it, they're like, oh my gosh, they see it, right? Yeah. They see the progress. They see more of themselves. And that's my favorite part, is that light bulb coming on. And that's what gets me out of bed every day is my weird brain thinking, what can I do today? Like I always have that thought of how am I going to like shift it and make it different? Yeah. I don't want to live the same thing. I don't want to Groundhog Day it where I'm asking the same questions or teaching the same lesson. That bores me, and it bores them. So yeah, that's my passion is seeing their faces and watching them become humans, like the humans that can embody those big emotions.
Yeah. you take a lot of creative paths, and even in like your website that I looked at, talk about how your mind thinks differently in a lot of ways. And even earlier you spoke about being neurodivergent.
Yes.
Do you believe that as someone who identifies as being neurodivergent, do you advocate that from a form of representation to other people in terms of representation being important, as if someone else is neurodivergent, like just being someone who can be like, yeah, you can do this too.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think I wasn't diagnosed until way later, because as women, we're not like, that's always something that they look at men, they look at boys, you know, and they think, oh, he's Asperger's, or he's ADHD, or, you know, women, we've learned to mask.
Yeah.
We've had to become like, I couldn't be weird when I was a kid. My brain didn't work the same way as everybody else, but I had to mask and pretend that it did. And so being diagnosed later in life and having more of an understanding, it's like somebody like turned the light on, and I was like, oh, this is why I do this, this, and this. This is why my high school experience was like this. This is why I feel like this. And the day the psychologist, we sat down and he talked me through it, I started crying, because all of a sudden, everything that happened to me that formed who I am through the struggle and all the things, all of it was because of this brain and the fact that it is not typical and it works in a completely different way. But now I've seen that's the thing that has gotten me to where I'm at. Yeah. Because I had to work in that space of being like, well, this is how my brain works. And I can't mask anymore. I have to allow the weirdness to completely and totally be out there. I have to allow that, you know, just the understanding of who I am and be comfortable with that. And that's been a journey on its own. But absolutely, I'm a huge advocate for anybody that's in that space that says, yeah, I'm neurodivergent. Like, my brain doesn't work like anyone else's. And that's why I feel like I've been able to do what nobody else does.
Yeah.
Is because my brain isn't, which is great.
Yeah. And I think it's so important that we bring that into a positive life.
100%.
Because I think it's happening more and more as the awareness spreads. But like, even a couple years ago, people would look at other people with neurodivergency and see it as a bad thing. And Correct. I think, you know, you are a perfect example of saying like, no, actually, this is my superpower.
It 100% is my superpower, is the fact that, you know, my sister and I have this thing, because her and I have kind of the same weirdness, of course, family. It's genetic. But she and I have this thing where we'll be somewhere and I'll see something and I'll be like, oh my God, $1 million idea. And we have a running list of these ideas that are brilliant that neither one of us will get to. But it's literally a list of these like life hacks or restaurant ideas or just these things that are so out there, but both of us can see it. And it's never been thought of before.
Right.
So I think that dude, it's a total superpower. It's a total superpower. And I'm really glad that I had the wherewithal to go and talk to a psychologist and be tested. And now it's awesome. I love it. It's so weird to say that, but I feel very lucky. Within just my whole identity as a woman, as somebody who's essentially created their own path. I feel very lucky to have been able to do all of this.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned a good point too in the representation of that is I can even from personal experience understand how us as women, that it's not really sought out or advocated for at all. No. And I think it's really a really important conversation to bring up, that just as you said, as easy as being asked like, what are your thoughts, what are your opinions as a young person, being able to discover more about yourself can lead to these really great amazing things. And then really that's what Femme Forte is like. Just in the conversation that we've been having, I love being able to connect with other human beings, and through that sometimes I have some self-awareness about myself. And it's just such like a beautiful thing to be able to more and more as I do these interviews. And yes, I interview the experiences and amazing things that my guests are doing, but I am also feel like from episode 1 to episode whatever this is now, like I personally have also grown in so many different avenues and ways.
Yeah, because you're hearing the stories of women, right? And you're hearing not just like where we came from, but you're hearing about who we are and why we do what we do and how we're drawn. And all of it's different. And I love that. So what you're doing is great. And I wanted to piggyback on that because when you said you were when you're interviewing your people, it's the same thing. When I do the interviews for Box 5 at Bands of America and I have these students there with me, it's the same thing. Like I get to know a little bit more about myself through them, even though the interviews are absolutely goofy and hilarious, mainly because I'm like literally a 15-year-old boy in my brain. But like, it's so interesting that after every single one of those interviews with those kids, I am more and more reassured that the kids are all right. Yeah. Right. But we need to guide them to have that authenticity where they feel like they can be that. And for some reason, I can get them in that space in that moment. And it's so cool to see. Yeah. And it's so cool to be witness to just standing there with them because they're hilarious. Yeah. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen some of those interviews and it's amazing, especially as teenagers. Like most teenagers, even in some of the stuff that we do at UDB, like are very shy and like, you know, even me being as much as cameras are in my face all the time, I have learned to pick up that confidence because it is a skill to be confident on camera and do all the things. So I think it's really, really cool what you do to have them being the most authentic versions of themselves, having not developed that skill to be on camera yet or whatever.
Absolutely. It's really funny too, because I think that some of them, they sent a lot of the drum majors they send, which is fine. But a lot of those drum majors, you know, and so I'll get like on the way back to the studio, I'll get, okay, what questions are you going to ask? And you asked me that you were like, I'm going to send you a list of questions. And I was like, I don't want you to send those. And the reason I tell them that I won't give them the questions is because I don't want them trying to create a narrative in their brain of what it should be. And that's what I tell them. I was like, if I give you the question and you think of an answer, and if you don't answer it the way you thought of it, all of a sudden you become super like, oh my God, I totally failed at this interview. Mm-hmm. That's how they operate. If it's not exactly what it was supposed to be. So that's my thing is I'm not going to give you the questions. I want you to speak about what you know. I'm not going to ask you any algebra. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to ask you how to spell like ridiculous things. I'm going to ask you about what you know, and what you know is band, and what you know is leadership, and what you know is you. Yeah. Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I actually just finished an interview with another podcast, and I found it kind of weird at the time because I didn't get any prep or anything before that. I was like, all right, we're just going to jump right in. Yep. But I will say that was probably one of the best interviews that I had done in a while, simply because the most genuine and authentic answers had come out. So
right. And you're not asking people what they don't know. Yeah. Right. You're asking them about who they are and their path and how they came to be and what they love. And I don't need somebody to send me questions and say, this is what we're talking about, because I already know it. Yeah. I live it. Right. Yeah. And I told you, like, had I had those, I would have ruminated on all of that. And in my brain would have been, if I didn't answer it exactly the way, I would have been disappointed. And it's the same thing with those kids. I don't want them to walk away disappointed. I want them to walk away from that interview like just giggling and having a really great experience and feeling, and it's so cute because they all get done with it and they're whatever. And they're like, oh my God, that was so cool. Oh my God. You know, and they're super funny. And, but yeah, no, I want them to just be able to talk freely about who they are. And I feel like you do a great job of providing a space for that with your guests. And I try to do the same with them. I try to create a space for them to be goofy and to be themselves and to be kids. And I think that's what I get the most out of it is allowing them to be kids and not having to be the drum major. Yeah. Right? Yeah. So it's really fun.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. I really do appreciate it.
Yeah, no, it's great. We could sit here for hours. Like, I love it.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, with that being said, we are just about to wrap up here. And so I have 3 lasting questions for you.
Great.
First one being, what does success mean to you?
Success means waking up every day, with a heart full of gratitude, a body that is willing and able to move, and a smile on my face. That's success.
Amazing. And next question is, who do you want to be, and what experiences do you want to create, whether that's for yourself or others?
I want to be exactly who I am right now. And I know tomorrow that's going to shift and change. I officiate weddings. And one of the last parting thing that I tell every single couple I've married, recently my sister and her husband, is that the minute you guys sit here and you stand here and you're holding hands and you're looking into each other's eyes, this is the last time you're going to know that person, because tomorrow morning they're going to wake up and they're going to grow more. And you have to continue to fall in love with the person that is growing beside you. You cannot stay in love with the person that you married, because it's not the same person. And so I take that to heart with myself. I love who I am. And I know that this is not who I'm going to be in 10 years. And I also know 10 years ago, I was not this person. But being able to love who you are and the growth, and be proud of who you are and the path that you're taking, because everything I do is genuine. Yeah. Everything I do is from my heart and my soul. It's very authentic. And that's who I want to be all the time. All the time. What was the second part of that question?
What experiences do you want to create, whether it's for yourself or others?
I want to continue to create more education for adults, for the directors, for the visual technicians, for the color guard technicians, and color guard directors. There is no education. You know, everybody can say, oh, there are these webinars, there are these, and I did that. I created Color Guard EDU, and that was a great resource, and I had some really great guests. But you know, color guard people are visual learners. They need somebody to be there. So I think that trying to create some semblance of that adult education, which we are doing at the Breakdown. We are creating this adult, like, the band directors come in and we talk about movement. We talk about, what are you looking for? How can you prevent injury? How do you create a safe space for your kids to be kids? You know, so I think that is my next, like, that's where I want to focus on. But you know what? If that veers me in a different direction, I just go with it. I'm not going to fight and just be like, if this thing isn't doing it, I'm going to just pivot and find the next thing. That's literally how I've lived my entire life, is if I keep going in this one direction, is just not feeling good, go a different direction. Yeah. You know, like, that's okay. Yeah. You don't have to be stuck in this thing. We are multifaceted people who have so much life experience. I'm not going to waste my time and bang my head against a wall just because one of my ideas isn't working. Yeah. I'm going to figure out how to make it better. And my brain does that. It's just like, oh, we can do this. And it's like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Yeah.
And last but not least question being, knowing the knowledge you have now, what advice would you have told your younger self?
That's a big one. I would have, if I had somebody like me in my life, I feel my life would be completely different, because it's, again, generational. We talked about, you know, there wasn't that idea of asking for your students to be authentic, right? Not just as performers, but as humans. Yeah. And if somebody had told me that high school was awful, and, you know, my parents went to the high school I went to, that's where they met. Like, then they stayed there. They're all still in Seminole. And that, to me, I couldn't do it. I couldn't do it. So if somebody would have said, you don't have to stay here and you don't have to have this life path, I think my brain would have been like, okay, but then I would have thought about it more. Yeah. The more you ask questions of your students, the more they think about the question, because they're being asked and not being told. And I wish that we were just asking more questions. I wish somebody would have asked me more questions when I was a kid about really what I wanted and who I wanted to be. And when you're 16 and 17, you don't know that, but you have a semblance of like this, like, I had wanderlust. I wanted to go out and like see everything, right? And so that's what drum corps did for me. That's what teaching drum corps did for me, is I got to see and meet people and do all the things. And I wish I would have had that support from the adults in my life at that time to say that's okay. Yeah.
And I think, like, as we know, practice makes perfect. I've even learned from a personal standpoint, like, one of the things personally in my life that I've had difficulty with is being able to provide that answer of like, what are your needs? And so in therapy, like my therapist says all the time, like, all right, so tell me what your needs are. And so it became repetition that the more I was able, in being provided that opportunity, the more I'm better able to communicate and advocate for what I needed.
For what you need. Yeah. And that need could change on a daily basis, right? Like you may need this thing today and tomorrow you may need this thing, and your ability to kind of switch your focus and to say, okay, this is what I need.
Yeah.
Right. I think that that's so important, that our needs aren't always set in stone. That's a shift from day to day, and not paying attention to that is where people get stuck.
Yeah.
And really paying attention to what you need.
Absolutely. Well, thank you once again for being on the show. Where can people find you?
You can find me at camillscreative.com. You can also find me on my socials. But yeah, I clinic. I do performance masterclasses. I still do choreography, even though my body says no. I do write a lot of band movement. And that's something I do want to mention, that something Michael Rosales and Leah and I with the breakdown, we're really trying to push band movement and not band body.
Yeah.
It's different. It's not just shapes anymore, right? So we're really trying to push this idea of movement. So I do a lot of that. I do curriculum work. I do instructional coaching. I do performance coaching. I mean, literally, like, I can do it. I'm not handy in the least. Please do not ask me to fix anything like a broken shelf or I can't use a hammer. It's real bad. If you need help with plants, I can help you with indoor plants. I love it.
Yes.
But yeah, no, camillscreative.com. And obviously my email address is on there, and reach out because I'm here and I'm, every day's a new adventure. So let's do it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to FemForte. FemForte is produced and hosted by me, Amanda DeFries. Music is by Humans Win. To learn more about our guests, sponsors, and to get more resources, go to femfortepodcast.com and follow us on social media at FemForte Podcast.